betrayed by family, an ex-boyfriend. I lost everything, but the truth about my life left me stronger than ever. I got married the same day I found out I was homeless. The ink on my marriage certificate wasn't even dry when my cousin Tyler whispered something in my ear that made my stomach collapse into itself. The house isn't yours anymore. Timothy sold it months ago. To explain how I reached this moment, standing in a rented tux, holding the trembling hand of the woman I loved, while realizing every foundation I thought I was gone, I have to rewind. I have to tell you about Timothy, my ex-boyfriend, and the careful lies that bled me dry before anyone realized. Timothy wasn't just a relationship. He was a performance. When we met July 3rd, 2020, at church cookout, he was holding a plate stacked with bacon-wrapped jalapenos, the smell hitting me before his smile did. He leaned in, joked about how the pastor would probably judge him for hogging the bacon, and just like that, he made me laugh harder than I had in years. That's the thing about him, he made everything feel easy. And for someone like me, who'd grown up anxious, tongue-tied in rooms full of people, easy felt like magic. For the first year, it was beautiful. He brought me fresh bread on Saturdays from this little bakery in town, still warm, the crust dusting my fingers in flour when I tore it open. We'd sit in my kitchen, the smell filling the space, talking about future vacations, a house, maybe kids someday. My mom adored him. The congregation adored him. And me? I thought I'd finally been chosen by someone who actually saw me. But Timothy wasn't building a life with me. He was building a cage. The first red flag came in the smallest way. Around midnight one night, I woke up to the sound of typing. Timothy was hunched over my laptop in the dark. When I asked what he was doing, he didn't even flinch. Just looking for jobs for you, babe. You're always stressed about money. My chest softened with guilt for questioning him, but something about the way the light of the screen lit up his smirk is stuck in my head. The next morning, he'd already closed the laptop. No evidence. No explanation. At the time, I was working at a shipping warehouse, pulling in just enough to cover rent, groceries, and my $450 car payment. Money was tight, but manageable. At least, I thought it was. Timothy started offering to help organize my finances. You're too trusting, Alex, he'd say, kissing my temple while scrolling through my phone like it was his. He claimed he'd set up autopay so I wouldn't have to stress. One less thing to keep you up at night. And I let him, because my insomnia had already been bad enough. The panic attacks had started after my father's funeral, and Timothy seemed like the only one who could call me Dan. I didn't realize then that every password he asked for, every bill he offered to handle, was another lock clicking shut. Tyler, my cousin, the one who would later save me, warned me. We were sitting on the hood of his truck one evening, the sun dipping low, when he said, "Something about that guy, I don't trust him. He's too polished, too perfect." I laughed it off. You've just never seen me happy before. But I remember the way Tyler's jaw clenched, like he was chewing on words he didn't want to spit out. Looking back, he saw it long before I did. The real unraveling began last summer. My card kept declining at gas stations, even though I'd just been paid. Timothy would fix it every time, claiming the bank flagged it for fraud. Then came the letters late payment, account overdrawn. He always intercepted them first. One night, while we were eating spaghetti in my kitchen, the sauce still simmering, steam fogging the window, I asked about it. "Hey Tim, where's all my money going?" He smiled, twirling his fork like this was a game. "Relax, I'm just moving things around to protect us. You don't understand how finances work, that's why you need me." And I believed him because he said it so calmly, so lovingly, while I was already drowning in self-doubt. It wasn't until weeks later that I realized the life I thought I was building with Timothy wasn't real. It was a performance staged for the church, the family, even me. Behind closed doors, he was writing my story, one password, one stolen signature at a time. And by the time I noticed, the stage was already burning. The first time I realized something was seriously wrong was at church. It was late May, just a couple months before the wedding. I walked into the sanctuary with Timothy, and I swear I felt the air shift. People who normally hugged me turned their backs, whispering into their hymnals. My mom's friend, Denise, gave me this look like I'd stolen from the offering plate. I remember clutching the wooden pew and whispering, "Well, what's going on?" Timothy squeezed my hand with that rehearsed concern. "Don't worry about it. People always get jealous when someone's happy." But the whispers didn't stop. That night, around midnight, I sat up in bed while Timothy slept. My heart was hammering from another panic attack, chest tight, shirt down with sweat. I'd been having nightmares, always the same. I was locked out of my own house, pounding on the door, and someone inside laughed at me. I stared at Timothy's phone on the nightstand. It was in this cracked pink iPhone case he'd claimed belonged to his sister. For months, he'd carried it around as a temporary backup while his real phone was being repaired. Something in me snapped. I picked it up. The messages I saw, they weren't just with strangers. They were with people from my church. He was pretending to be me, using my name, my photos. He'd set up fake accounts, saying vile things, begging for money, accusing people of sins they hadn't committed. Entire threads of conversations designed to make me look unstable, dangerous, disgusting. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. My first thought was, this can't be real. I must be misunderstanding. But no, the usernames were mine. The voice was mine, twisted. When I confronted him in the morning, Timothy didn't even deny it. He just smirked and said, "You really should trust me to handle your reputation. You'd ruin it all by yourself." And that's when I realized he wanted me isolated. He wanted me dependent. After therapy, my counselor told me this is called gaslighting. At the time, though, I just thought I was losing my mind. The insomnia got worse. I'd hear phantom typing in the middle of the night, even when the house was silent. I started questioning everything, my own memory, my worth, even my sanity. When I told Tyler what I'd found, he clenched his fist so tight his knuckles went white. "Alex, you have to get out." "I can't," I whispered. "We're about to get married. Everyone already thinks I'm broken." He didn't push me that night. He just said, "I got your back, but something's coming, you feel it too, don't you?" And God, I did. The money problems escalated next. My $450 car payment bounced twice, and when I called the bank, the woman on the phone hesitated before saying, "Sir, there's been unusual activity." She told me someone had taken out credit in my name, multiple cards, loans. Tens of thousands of dollars. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hand trembled so badly I nearly dropped the receiver. When I tried to file a police report, the officer assigned was my cousin Brian. At first, I felt relief someone in the family would take me seriously. But Brian brushed it off, laughed even. "Alex, sounds like you're just being careless. Don't drag the family name through the mud over your own mistakes." I later learned Timothy had already talked to him, slipped him an envelope. My own cousin buried the report before it even touched the system. That betrayal cut deeper than any stranger's cruelty. It made me realize how much Timothy's web stretched, how many people were either fooled or paid off to look away. The paranoia was eating me alive. I stopped answering calls. I stopped going to church. At work, people whispered behind my back. I'd catch fragments. "That's him, the one who begged Denise for money online. They don't let him near you kids." Timothy, meanwhile, smiled through it all. He'd cook breakfast, bacon sizzling, the smell filling the house like nothing was wrong. He'd place a plate in front of me and say, "See, we're fine. They just don't understand us." And I wanted so readily to believe him, but each bite tasted like ash in my mouth. One night, I found him again at my laptop, typing furiously. "Who are you talking to?" I asked. He turned ice cold. "Everyone who matters, and guess what? They believe me. They always will." It was then I understood. This wasn't just about money or lies. This was about control. Timothy didn't want to ruin me by accident. He wanted to destroy me completely. And he was succeeding. The day I found out I was completely ruined is etched into my memory like acid. It was June 14th, 2023, a Wednesday. I woke up to the smell of bacon cooking, Timothy's version of normalcy, but my phone kept buzzing. I picked it up, heart thundering, and froze. There were emails from my landlord, eviction notice, balance due, $4,320. My car insurance policy cancelled. And, worst of all, the bank, all accounts frozen due to fraudulent activity. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. My home, my savings, everything Timothy had claimed to protect was gone. I tried calling him, shouting in the empty kitchen, the scent of bacon taunting me. He was already gone, of course, leaving me to process the nightmare. Tyler came over immediately after I texted him. He had that same rigid jaw I remembered from before. I showed him the emails, my hands trembling so violently that I could barely hand over my phone. "Alex, this is worse than I thought," he muttered, scanning the documents. "He didn't just ruin you, he's been impersonating you online for years. Look at this." Tyler pulled up screenshots from a hidden folder on my laptop. Timothy had created social media accounts, online shops, even fake dating profiles all in my name. He had convinced people in our town, the church congregation, even co-workers that I was a con artist, a scammer, someone to avoid. Hundreds of people had transferred money, all while I was being publicly humiliated. I sank to the floor, the pink iPhone case I had always loved slipping from my fingers. It felt like a little anchor to the man I thought I knew, now tainted. He smiled while doing this, I whispered. I watched him destroy everything I cared about. Tyler shook his head. "It's not just him, Alex. Brian, the police officer, he buried your reports. He took bribes. The betrayal isn't just emotional, it's systemic." And then the last punch landed. Tyler uncovered financial records that implicated another family member. My own aunt had laundered money for Timothy's schemes. Every bank, every shell account, every falsified signature tied back to people I thought I could trust. The psychological impact was immediate and brutal. Nightmares returned with vengeance. I would wake screaming at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, feeling hands gripping my shoulders. Panic attacks began daily at the grocery store, at work, even in the car. Trust became impossible. I couldn't even answer my mom's calls without fear that Timothy had manipulated her too. Therapy sessions became my lifeline. My counselor guided me through intensive exercises to rebuild my self-worth, teaching me grounding techniques for when the panic hit. "You are not broken, Alexander," she would say, but my brain had been rewired to doubt everything. Even social consequences piled on. The church congregation turned their backs on our family. Friends whispered in hallways, avoiding eye contact. Work colleagues gave me the cold shoulder. I became a social pariah in my own life. Every interaction carried the weight of humiliation Timothy had orchestrated. One of the most shocking revelations came when I realized the full scope of Timothy's impersonation. He had not only drained our finances, but had also ruined my reputation to the point where the community actively avoided me. Letters, messages, even online reviews attributed to me were lies meant to isolate and terrorize. I remember sitting on my bedroom floor for hours, creating the pink iPhone case like it was the only piece of me left. How could someone smile while doing this? I whispered aloud. Tyler just sat beside me, silent. He didn't have answers, just presence. I started documenting everything: emails, receipts, screenshots, timestamps. The stack of evidence grew higher than the kitchen counter. The smell of fresh bread Tyler had brought over for breakfast mingled with more tears. The contrast was absurd and painful, life's little comforts mocking the chaos Timothy had created. By the time I contacted the few family members I still trusted, the web of betrayal became undeniable. Not only had Timothy orchestrated my financial ruin and impersonation, but he had allies in the shadows: Brian, my cousin and supposed protector, my aunt, even a former neighbour who had helped move funds. The abuse was more widespread than I had imagined. I felt cornered, a puppet whose strings were yanked by everyone I had ever leaned on. My own sense of reality felt skewed. I developed hypervigilance, triple-checking every email, locking every door, and panicking at any sudden sound. Timothy had succeeded in turning the world into a hostile place where I was always on edge. Yet, in that darkest moment, a seed of resolve began to grow. Tyler said, finally, "Alex, they're counting on you to stay down, but we have the proof. You can fight back." I didn't know how yet. I just knew I couldn't let this end here. The nightmare was far from over, but maybe, just maybe, it could end differently. I remember the night like a storm. It was September 8th, 2023, around 11:47 p.m. The house was silent except for the hum of my laptop. I had collected every scrap of evidence Timothy and his allies had left: bank statements, screenshots of fake accounts, transaction histories, even the emails Brian had buried in family discretion. I stared at the pink iPhone case sitting beside me, its edges worn from months of clutching it during panic attacks. The scent of fresh bread Tyler had brought lingered faintly, but it didn't comfort me. It mocked the irony of how much I had lost while people smiled and cooked bacon, pretending life was normal. I posted everything online. Every transaction, every lie, every manipulated message. I didn't sugarcoat it. I titled the thread, "How Timothy and Family Ruined My Life," receipts inside. The responses were instantaneous. People began sharing, tagging others. Comments rolled in. "I can't believe he got away with this for so long. My heart goes out to you. Do we need justice?" Timothy called around midnight, his voice calm and measured too calm. "Alexander, what are you doing?" he asked, smirking through the line. "You have no idea what you're releasing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "You lied. You impersonated me, drained me financially, humiliated me publicly, and I'm done watching it happen." There was a pause. Then he laughed, low and sinister. "You think a post online will fix anything? People will forget. They always forget." "I don't think," I said. "I know, and now everyone can see the truth." By 2 a.m., Timothy's empire was collapsing. Friends, acquaintances, even random strangers who had fallen for his impersonation reached out. Banks froze accounts, transactions were reversed, and legal teams started calling him. The man who smiled while destroying my life was suddenly powerless. The fallout was immediate. The church congregation that had turned their backs on me was shocked when they saw the receipts proving I had been manipulated and defamed. Friends and neighbours who had whispered behind my back apologised, many saying they never knew the full story. Even Brian, my cousin and the corrupt officer, was forced to admit he had buried my reports. The public humiliation he had caused Timothy became his own. Timothy tried to contact me, but I blocked his numbers. Seeing him powerless, watching his face fall in videos I'd posted online, felt like reclaiming a part of myself I hadn't realised had been stolen. Then came the final twist. Amid the chaos, I received a call from a lawyer about my heritage and inheritance I'd never known existed. My late grandfather had left property and assets under my name, hidden due to old family disputes. Timothy's manipulation had almost erased not only my present but my past. Suddenly, the pieces of my life that I thought were gone began to reassemble themselves in ways I couldn't have imagined. Tyler stayed with me that night, helping me sift through the documents, reassuring me as panic attacks tried to resurface. He handed me a plate of bacon, and I laughed, small, shaky, but real. "Feels like the first time I've eaten in weeks without hating the world," I said. "I told you," Tyler said, smirking. "You just had to see it with your own eyes." By the next morning, Timothy had gone completely off the grid. Banks had frozen his accounts, social media had suspended him, and even family members who had enabled him began distancing themselves. I realised the smile he wore while destroying everything I cared about wasn't just arrogance, it was overconfidence. And overconfidence is vulnerable to evidence. That night, I finally slept. No nightmares, no tremors, no racing thoughts. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of peace. It wasn't the end, it was the start of reclaiming my life. Even in the chaos, there was a sense of empowerment. I had taken back my narrative, exposed the lies, and begun untangling the web Timothy had woven. But the real victory came when I testified in court, not just against him, but against the network of people who had facilitated the abuse. Each session in court, each piece of evidence presented, was a step toward healing not just for me, but for others who had been quietly victimized. Tyler looked at me after the last day of testimony, his eyes soft. "You did it. You actually did it." I nodded. "We did it, and now, maybe we can finally breathe." Even after Timothy's empire collapsed, the aftermath hit me like a freight train. I thought victory would feel liberating, but instead, I felt hollow, exhausted, and terrified. My apartment was gone, I'd lost it in the financial wreck he engineered. Tyler had me crash on his couch, but even there, I couldn't escape the panic attacks that returned like uninvited ghosts. Around midnight, I'd wake sweating, heart hammering, convinced someone was coming to take the last thing I had left. The nightmares were relentless. I dreamt of Timothy smiling while burning my papers, the pink iPhone case melting into flames, church pews turning into cages, and every face I loved whispering that it was all my fault. Sometimes I woke screaming, gasping for air, Tyler shaking me until I could breathe. Even therapy felt unbearable at first. I needed intensive counselling just to rebuild my self-worth. My sessions became both sanctuary and torment chamber. "You've been rewired to distrust," my counsellor said calmly one morning, handing me a notebook. "You will need to retrain your instincts, Alexander. Start with one small truth at a time." I tried. I really did. But at work, people still whisper. A co-worker muttered as I passed by, "So you're the one behind that online scandal." My stomach twisted. Even strangers on the street looked at me sideways, as if I were a walking cautionary tale. Social isolation became my constant companion. Even my family was fractured. My mom tried to support me, but the church congregation's rejection weighed on her, and she didn't know how to defend me without angering people she'd known for decades. Dinner at her house felt like walking a minefield. Every comment, every sideways glance triggered my anxiety. Financial instability compounded everything. I had a few $1,000s left in a bank account, but with my car repossessed, rent unpaid, and utilities overdue, I felt like I was drowning. I remember sitting on the cold kitchen floor, staring at a $450 car payment notice, trying not to cry. Tyler brought over fresh bread. Its warm, comforting smell juxtaposed painfully against my despair and placed it beside me. "Eat," he said softly. "You can't rebuild on an empty stomach." The betrayal by my cousins, the church, even law enforcement, it all came crashing down on me. Brian, the police officer, who had buried my reports, sent an apology through Taylor, claiming family pressure. I couldn't even respond. Every instinct screamed that trusting anyone could cost me everything again. Even when I tried to reach out online, some people accused me of orchestrating a drama for attention, despite all the receipts I posted. It felt endless, like proving reality itself to the world was a Sisyphean task. The lowest point came one rainy Thursday evening. I had just returned from a therapy session, my lungs tight from panic, my legs shaking from exhaustion. The rain hammered against Tyler's window, the smell of wet pavement seeping in. I slumped on the couch, clutching the pink iPhone case as if it were a lifeline. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered. Tyler sat beside me, silent at first, letting me feel the gravity of my emotions. Then he said, "Yes, you can, one step at a time. We'll rebuild." I wanted to believe him, but the trauma had rewired me. My brain defaulted to fear, suspicion, and shame. Every friendly gesture felt like a trap. Every laugh in public felt like mockery. I had nightmares, panic attacks, trust issues, the whole psychological package Timothy had left behind. Therapy became my constant. Twice a week, I went to sessions that were exhausting and uncomfortable. We worked on grounding techniques, CBT exercises, and confronting the shame that had been artificially piled on me by someone I'd loved. I kept a journal, documenting every intrusive thought, every anxiety spike, every memory of betrayal. Tyler helped me track receipts, money, and communications, a practical anchor in a mental storm. By the end of the week, I could stand outside without immediately scanning the horizon for threats. I could sleep without waking at midnight in full-blown terror. But the social isolation remained. Old friends had moved on, the church still quietly avoided me, and the whispers lingered like a low hum in the air. Even at rock bottom, though, I started noticing small victories. I answered an email without fear. I laughed at a joke in Tyler's living room. I made a $50 payment toward a new car, my first act of financial independence since Timothy. Each tiny step felt monumental. The truth was brutal, the journey to recovery would be long, and even now, scars remain. But acknowledging that rock bottom was the stage, not the end, became my first act of real empowerment. I wasn't out of danger, but I could start charting a path forward. And for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope that one day, Timothy and everyone who had betrayed me would no longer have power over my life. Recovery didn't happen overnight. It was messy, terrifying, and exhausting. But after months of therapy, long conversations with Tyler, and painstakingly rebuilding my financial life, I began to feel like Alexander again, the real Alexander, not the one Timothy had tried to erase. Therapy was central to this process. I attended intensive counseling sessions twice a week, working on trauma processing, grounding techniques, and rebuilding self-worth. My counselor taught me to recognize triggers, the smell of cooking bacon, the pink iPhone case, even certain times of night, all reminders of the abuse. Gradually, I learned to face them without spiraling. I kept a journal of panic attacks, nightmares, and flashbacks, charting progress and setbacks alike. Every small victory mattered, a full night of sleep, a conversation with a friend, the ability to step into a bank without trembling. Financially, it was like learning to walk again. Tyler helped me organize my life, applying for a modest apartment, creating a strict budget, and paying down debts Timothy had left behind. I started working part-time at a local bakery, where the smell of fresh bread, once a reminder of simpler days, became comforting again. Handling money myself, every $450 car payment, every grocery bill, became a symbol of reclaiming control. The legal battle was grueling but necessary. With Tyler and my attorney's help, I gathered every receipt, screenshot, and email Timothy had tried to hide. Court sessions were tense, the ethic with tension as I faced not just him, but his network of accomplices, including Brian and my aunt. They smirked, tried to intimidate, but I had prepared meticulously. When it came my turn to testify, I stood firm. I presented the evidence step by step, showing exactly how Timothy had impersonated me online, drained my finances, and destroyed my reputation. I showed how Brian had buried my police reports, and how my aunt and others had facilitated the abuse. The courtroom was silent as each document proved a deliberate conspiracy. I could see the shock and guilt cross their faces. The smugness Timothy once wore had vanished completely. But the real victory wasn't just personal. After my testimony, I helped other victims come forward. Some were people Timothy had scammed years ago. Others were friends who had been humiliated in the same impersonation scheme. I organized meetings, offered guidance on collecting evidence, and provided emotional support for those navigating the same trauma I had endured. Being able to transform my pain into advocacy gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Socially, I slowly rebuilt trust. Friends who had doubted me came back, apologizing for not seeing the truth sooner. Some members of the church reached out, acknowledging the rumors had been false. The whispers didn't disappear entirely, but my confidence grew enough to ignore them. I learned to set boundaries, to recognize manipulative behavior, and to value people who truly supported me. Financially and emotionally, I started anew. I moved into my own apartment, small but mine. I bought a car with cash, finally breaking free from the $450 payment nightmare Timothy had engineered. Every purchase, every act of independence, felt like a stitch in a tapestry of recovery. The most surreal moment came when I reflected on my hidden heritage. The inheritance left by my late grandfather, a secret Timothy had nearly erased, allowed me to stabilize my life further. I realized that even amidst betrayal, some threads of my past remained untouchable, waiting for me to reclaim them. Today, I am not the same person I was before Timothy. I am stronger, wiser, and more cautious, but also more compassionate. I know my vulnerabilities, and I know my worth. The scars remain, but they are reminders of survival, not shame. I still have nightmares sometimes, and panic attacks occasionally flare, but they no longer define me. I wake up, breathe, and remind myself I am not broken. I am alive. I am Alexander. Looking back, Timothy's empire of lies and betrayal could have crushed me completely. But I chose to fight. I reclaimed my life, my finances, my dignity, and my voice. I testified, exposed the truth, and helped other victims. I discovered hidden strength I never knew I had, and even learned about my heritage, a reminder that family betrayal doesn't erase your roots. For anyone reading this, who's been betrayed, gaslighted, or abandoned by people they trusted, survival is possible. Recovery is hard, but every step forward is a victory. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the darkness you survived taught you more about resilience, courage, and love than you ever imagined. I am Alexander, and my life is finally mine.